Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Today I have with me Katie, who I met through, I met her through 1212. So she was in the first round of 1212, and she reached out to me when she was kind of, feeling the pull, but wasn't really sure if this was for her. And she sent me a message and shared a couple things about herself. And I right away felt this really strong harmonic resonance with her and felt like a lot of connection to information coming through. And so we had a brief communication and then she ended up joining. And we've had some back and forths since then because I guess a couple of the different things that I shared in different programs, like Who the Fuck Am I and 1212 and some of my lives, I think helped to reinforce and validate in Katie some of the things that she already kind of knew. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It validated them so that I could kind of take them forward where I was kind of struggling with, that thing about working is really hard for me. It's like, am I lazy? Am I taking advantage of people? No, I just need to conserve that much energy and have that much alone time. So it helped me definitely move forward and feeling confident and claiming some of that.
Yeah. And I remember one of the very first thing that you shared with me is that you're like, I think you said something like, know I don't really know what this means, but I know that I'm an archangel of the Akashic field. And that was like that. I remember when you said that, I suddenly got access to the best way I can describe it is the harmonics of your soul. And I was like, whoa, like all kinds of information started bursting forward, like I'm understanding that. And so that was one of the things that came up, right? That, like you said, of recognizing that working in sort of the grind and the rhythms that we are told we're supposed to work in doesn't really resonate with you, which makes sense because you have an angelic soul frequency. So the way that I understand the angelics is it's a much gentler energy, and this reality can be extremely abrasive, and it takes a lot of energy just to deal with the abrasiveness of being alive. And so there's very little energy left over to work, but also that's not a good use of your consciousness and your energy and your life force. Your angelic life force is better put to use cultivating and purifying that soul blueprint so that it the way that I see it is when our blueprint is really clarified and developed, it influences other people's and other consciousness all around. It's like a tuning fork. So anyway, all this is a preamble just to say that I'm so excited. I'm going to do an Akashic reading with Katie today and share it with all of you. And I'm really excited to because ever since she reached out, like I said, I felt a lot of information coming forward, but we haven't actually done a reading together before. In fact, this is my first time seeing Katie, face to face through Zoom, as it were, because
I've been looking forward to this for 9 months. I started listening to your podcast almost a year ago, and I was like, one day this is going to happen. So this is
and it's happening. Yeah. Yay. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say or talk about before we go into the reading, or do you just want to dive in?
Let's just dive in.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So as I told you beforehand, it's helpful for me if you kind of steer the ship and you tell me where you want me to go in this infinite field of information. So can you give me sort of a starting point that you want me to focus in on?
Yeah. So a starting point is healing work that I can do for myself that will continue to clear my channel. But also I'm curious about the healing work I'm going to do for others. Last 20 years, my time as an adult, I've had a lot of health issues. I feel like I'm past that point. I'm kind of at the crumbs of, adjusting my nervous system now to feeling at ease with things because I don't think more things are going to come up. But I've gone through some really weird stuff and like autoimmune diseases and strange injuries, some of which I think is related to trauma as a kid, some which I think is just me processing and transmuting energy that I was maybe not aware of that I was doing. But the cool thing is like I've been able to heal all of that and mostly by myself. So at this point, I feel like a very powerful healer. I'm not sure how to like set that in motion yet, and I'm not sure exactly what my skill sets are going to be entirely, but I definitely am locked down as a healer. So if you could tap into that, that would be fun.
Absolutely. I'm just going to do my tuning process. It'll just take a minute or two. Okay, so the first thing that comes through is this isn't really related to your question, but I'm really strongly seeing that you're sort of, I don't know if they would be called aura colors or what. I guess that's probably the best way to describe it, but they are there's white, it's predominantly white, which is probably no surprise. And then there's like a soft lavender that progresses into like a deeper violet purple and also a deep, like a dark kind of royal blue. So those are the predominant colors in your field. And then there's these little ripples of gold that move throughout your field as well, but they don't seem to be they're like, I don't know, like shimmers, like sun reflecting off of fish scales or something like that. And then yeah, you are a really, really powerful healer. So the main way that your healership works is that you have an ability to hold a frequency of truth that transmute, I guess, what I like, over the last 8 or 9 months or so, have been referring to as the illusion. So it's sort of like it dissolves the illusion. And the way it's showing itself to me is you have somebody who comes to you who, say, for example, if they have been in a similar situation to you where they had like experiences that were generating some kind of either trauma response in their body or like a physical ailment or something like that, your your gift is that your field kind of, you're not so much like, I wouldn't necessarily call you like a medical medium, or is that what they're called? Medium, medical intuitive. There's like
I've heard it, but it's
yeah. So so what I mean is your your gifts aren't so much focused on the physical form, but the physical form is affected by it. But your gifts are like sort of moving through the physical form into the mental and emotional fields where stories are held. And the stories are, they contain a lot of illusion. And it's holding like distortion patterns in the person's field, which are then affecting their physical form. And you have this ability to, I'm kind of seeing you putting your hands around somebody's head and
I
transmitting.
love to do that. I like always
Okay.
touch people's faces. I don't okay, that's where that comes from.
Yeah. And it's like this between your two hands, a field is created that holds, again, it's very much like it's interesting. I keep using the term harmonics because that's what it feels like. It's like a harmonic that resonates at a very pure frequency, that I'm using the term truth because it's like the frequency is so pure that it's more powerful than the illusion. So when you hold your hands around somebody's head, you're sending this like this frequency field. It works very similar to like sound healing, but
Oh, I
you're in a,
I was actually gonna ask you about that too, because that resonates also. And through singing, for some reason lately, I've been feeling like healing through sound, like with me singing.
amazing. Yes. So for you, it's all about harmonics. It's all about harmonics. So yeah, that's it. Is you're able to arrange your energy or channel an energy that is a certain harmonic frequency. That's the way the mechanics of it, the way it kind of works is like it it cuts through. So rather than doing like talk therapy per se, it kind of cuts straight through the illusion. And I guess the best way that I can describe it is like it sort of snaps them out of like a fog of, like almost like if you were asleep and you're like, where am I? But it's maybe not necessarily that dramatic because they're not asleep and they're not waking up from a dream, although kind of they are, but it's more like they would pieces of clarity will come to them and we'll just be like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. But it also feels really gentle. Like there's in your field, I feel a lot of power. Like you could abruptly wake people up, but the archangelic soul group that you belong to sort of like its directive is a gentleness so that people will feel it more on an incremental level, which is easier for them to integrate. And what I see is that it's a little bit like doing like somebody might see it as Reiki, and it's not dissimilar, where you'd be doing hands-on things and maybe clearing out their central chakras, but mostly it's focused on the interface between the emotional and mental fields, like clearing that out, which then has an effect on clearing out the physical body.
Awesome. Very cool. So then I still feel like I'm working on clearing out my channel and I still feel like there's some work to do. So I'm wondering if there's stuff that kind of comes up that like maybe I'm aware of but haven't moved forward with, or things that I'm totally blocked from seeing. Just things that I can do to clear my channel, to kind of like I'm ready to start trying this stuff, I think. So
Okay. I know that you're moving. Are you making a drastic move?
not at first, but then yes. So currently I'm just temporarily going to move to my sister's, but I've been feeling the last few months like I have to get to the Southwest. So I
Yeah.
like turned down the job that I had lined up, and made plans to get out of this apartment. So I'll be making a big move. Yeah.
And do you know anybody there? Like, is your family there? Did you grow up there? Okay. That is in total alignment. So I was really feeling like it's really important that you get away from the place that you grew up in, like even like away from the surrounding area,
Yep.
because that's most what's holding you back at this point. It's not you have cleared a lot out of your system. So I feel these like little, it's more like little residual, I don't know, like grungy bits. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
right.
But I called them crumbs, I think, at the beginning of the call. Like these crumbs are left. Yeah.
Yeah, little crumbs, little like little, like the scummy stuff that builds up on
Yeah.
the edges. Let's say that's a bit harder to clean off. But the reason it's hard to get rid of that is because there is this vibration that reinforces it. And because it's been around for your whole life, more or less, in this incarnation, there's a part of your brain that perceives it as just being like the way it is.
Yeah. It's
Um,
related to my nervous system. Yeah. It's like just locked in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you create a clean break, you're gonna be able to see them as like, oh, it's not just the way it is. Like it's just the way it was, and now it's not anymore. And it's gonna be so much easier. It's like there's a sticky thing that's holding those crumbs in place, and that sticky thing is gonna dissolve.
Okay. All right. That's it, huh? That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I can look more into like so essentially, and I'm feeling this for a lot of people, is that we're on the verge of activating an amount of power in ourselves that like 99.9% of us have never even fathomed was possible. And so it's a little bit like edgy and stretchy and like I've been sort of the way I see it is like having superpowers activated almost like superheroes and superhero movies or
Mhm.
fantasy movies and there's a part of me that still struggles to communicate this because I'm like I don't know. I know it's real, but I'm afraid that people are going to think that I'm just blowing smoke up their butts or something. But I see you and a lot of angelics all of a sudden. You remember I described angelics as being like these pillars of light. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, like your whole body being like surrounded by and I don't know, like this big pillar of light channeling into you. And so you're kind of like just walking around in the world, almost like your spine is all of a sudden like held up super straight and you're glowing from the inside out. But also anybody who's really sensitive to auras and energy fields would like either visibly see or air quotes see that pillar of light surrounding you. And yeah, I feel like the angelics are just going to get really activated and just be walking around as pillars of light. And it's very it feels very, very near to me, like in the next, like a process that is onboarding currently and will probably, if you were a light bulb being turned on, it would be sometime in the next maybe like 6 to 18 months.
Okay. I do have these experiences where like nature is really important to me. I spend a lot of time in nature, and I have these experiences where sometimes I'll go there and I'll just kind of get this feeling of I have to be standing in this one spot. And when I get there, I can feel like energy flood through my crown and go out my feet. And so that feels somewhat similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I feel like that is grid work, and like it's just really cool. I'm glad that we're sharing this on the podcast because I think this is a beautiful illustration that like grid work is literally that intuitive, is letting yourself be drawn to a spot that, either just feels random but important, or that it's a spot that you've like developed a relationship with over time. And it's for some reason, when I say grid, it's like, I don't know, like the ley lines cross, like little ley lines or something like that, or there's like quartz veins that cross, that when we become channels for this light, it floods into the earth, and I don't know, it does something that's really important.
Yeah. I don't always know what it is, but I'm happy to be there for it. All right. Trying to think of some other questions. Okay. So I quit teaching. I think I've told you that before. So many reasons. I don't think we need to go in them. We know the educational system is just a programmed piece of bullshit. But I always told people like, I'm a special educator that hates the educational system. Like I'm here for the kids. But even then, it just got to be too much. I mean, you just feel like you're lying to them all the time.
Yeah.
And teaching is one of those careers that just takes all your time. So as I'm like, ascending and feeling all these pulls to all these other things, teaching was kind of holding me back from having this space to welcome those things and invite them in. So that's really kind of what led me to quit teaching. I don't know. And there's all this like spiritual work that I'm going to be doing, but I do need to like have a job and make some money to survive as I build that up. It's not something you can just jump into. So I'm kind of curious about, I'm having a hard time finding something. I keep like applying to jobs that are in the mental health knit of things, because that's like my special was really working with children with trauma, and I'm like just so compassionate about that. But it's such a high burnout, and I want to have the space to try these other things. So I'm sort of curious about what I could find that will suit those needs. And then what can I do? Like what's waiting for me creatively? Because teaching and working with kids is one of the ways that my creativity came out. So I'm kind of like, gee, I don't know what I'm going to do with that time, you know?
I'm just laughing because your guides are cock blocking you with these jobs, right?
Yes. I do.
Yeah. I was kind of like tuning into their energy, and they're like, because she can't, it would just be it would be like, different job, same shit, basically.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so at this point, like the reason that you are driven to quit, everything you were describing, like at this point, your consciousness can't handle it. Your energy field, like it's so abrasive, you would just start getting sick, and you would be cock blocked the whole way, even if you got a job. But what I'm seeing, like even at the point where you were just articulating, like, well, I need to make money, which of course we all do. That's like,
Yeah.
that's the reality of the situation. But I was getting like, oh, well, I mean, you're supposed to work with parents and children as your next thing. You don't necessarily have to do it forever. Like also, sometimes
Well, I
feel the tendency.
sorry. I was just going to say, I mean, I have been going through a lot of grief, like children. Oh my God, I just love them. Like there's just such a deep connection that I have with them and that they have with me. And it's the highlight of, the last 10 years of teaching was being able to work with kids. So there's a lot of grief and like worrying that I was going to have to let that go. So that feels very good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, sometimes we have a tendency to pigeonhole ourselves into careers still because that was the old way of doing things, and we don't have to do that anymore. But the next step that I feel like that is just very it's easy. So when we talk about you healing in general and like, holding your hands around somebody's head and creating a frequency field and doing sound healing and things like that, in general, it can feel like, okay, cool. Like, how do I do that? Like, how do I turn that into, a thing where I can essentially receive remuneration in the form of money for what I'm offering so that I can, pay my rent and buy food and, the things. But when I'm tuning into you doing that for children, I immediately see this huge lineup of people that are like parents that are like, the system is failing my kid. The system is failing my kid. I need somebody who actually can like help them and tune into them. And you're like, I've been training for this.
That's my dream is to find my dream is to find a weird ass group of parents who have kids like in like the elementary age, section of life, and just having like a pod that I can kind of just like fuck around with, kind of like the 12-12 a little bit. Like, yeah, I'll teach you some things that like we need, but also like let's play with telepathy. Let me teach you how to cope with life stresses and how to think outside the box. And like that would be my dream.
And I also see you doing like kind of building your practice through offering, and please don't feel like you need to do this forever because it's just not a sustainable model for most people. But starting out by offering like one-off sessions of where essentially like you're reading the children. You're
Uh,
reading
well,
that you're like tuning into their auric field, their harmonic field. You are like putting your hands around them and you're just letting because you are. So anybody who did not do who the fuck am I? You might not understand this, but whatever. The archangelic field and the Akashic field are like almost the exact same thing. So you are attached to the Akashic field. You don't even need to do training. You just need to like create the space to access.
yeah, right.
And so I see like people bringing like people, who are like, there's so many. It's not just like a random weird pod of parents. I mean, definitely you can bring together pods, but there are a lot more than you think that there are of parents across the United States who are really looking for somebody who can see their child and tell them the things that they can't see about their child and who their child will feel comfortable opening up to. And so their initial interest is like, having their child read, but then from there, they want to know like what can I do? And that's where your pod comes in. Yeah, your like 12-12 version pod of playing with the psychic abilities of these children and normalizing it and also allowing the parents to explore that for themselves too. Like one of the biggest, easiest gifts that children have, especially when they're at that like from infancy to the elementary age, is telepathy. And it's the parents that can't hear. They can't repeat the messages. So I mean, and a lot of parents really want to know how to do that. So I feel like once you sort of like set up shop, whatever that means, and put, your open sign in the door and sort of energetically communicate to the universe, okay, like I'm ready for my first, handful of of kids and parents, they're just gonna find their way to you.
Oh, that's so cool and exciting. Awesome. And then how about like other creative endeavors, like writing for one, feels like something that's been gnawing at me for like years and I don't do it. But like other, I guess most of my creativity came out in like lesson planning and designing really cool lessons that like got to the crux of things and lots of fun hands-on learning, So I'm like missing kind of that part of creation.
Right.
So I feel like there are things waiting for me. I'm just not exactly sure what they are. Wondering if you have any ideas.
There are a couple things that I can see, and one of them I don't really have, like I don't have a name for it, but the first one that came through with quite a lot of clarity was some form of painting, and I think it's wax and caustic painting, and it kind of combines writing and painting. So it almost feels like a combination of writing with English and like wax and caustic lends itself beautifully to collage. So it feels like there are these written pieces or like found words or something that, you embed, but it also feels like there's some light language, like
Yeah.
that
I
will come.
recently had a dream that I was speaking light language.
Yeah. It's so wild how many of us are getting this activation now. It's just so cool. Like I'm just imagining this day where we just show up and we're like, "Ihiri wa toa, ifiri wa atoa," and people are like, "What?" And we just understand each other.
I look forward to that. That would be really fun just to watch them freak out too.
Yeah, it feels like there's these beautiful. I just understand the light language. There are these like very fluid looking symbols that are wanting to come through and being sort of like carved into the wax, and it's very
And
beautiful and very tactile. And it also feels like you work pretty much exclusively with beeswax, and there's this like delicious honey smell that comes from it too, and it's very like cleansing and purifying of your own field. I also was getting stained glass, but then the next thing I got was like, oh, like there's a part, I don't know if there's a way to do stained glass that is not toxic, but when it came to the painting on the flux and then like putting the lead on, like there were all these toxic fumes that came up and there was suddenly this big like, no, can't
yeah.
do that.
Right.
But there's something about the color, the light and the color through the glass does feel, well, I don't know if that's something that you create or you more collect it or you just like see like beautiful stained glass pieces or I don't know. And then the third part that came through that I was really kind of trying to decipher is it feels like a form of movement that is not for the purposes of exercise.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's also, I wouldn't necessarily call it dance or any kind of dance that I understand, but it feels like it probably from a different culture. It might be considered dance in a different culture. Like it kind of reminds me of maybe like Thai dancing or something like that, where it's not dancing as we would understand. Like it's not so much to a rhythm. It's like, I don't know. It's just interesting expressive movement. It's hard for me to zero in on it because I don't have a context for it. Because I can tell, even as I'm talking about it, it's not Thai dancing.
I have a Native American guide who is always trying to get me to like dance as a way to transmute stuff.
Yeah,
But I don't really I'm not feeling that yet. So
yeah.
I
It's
just do
because,
yoga or something. But that's funny because I hear that.
and maybe that's it. Like, because also when I think of the examples of Native American dancing that I've seen, again, it's not the same dance that we would understand in Western culture, what's like European based culture, or I don't know, whatever this culture we live in. It's different. It's connected to something different. So the movement moves through your body differently. And that's kind of what I'm seeing is that the movement moves through your body differently, but it also leaves a lot of room for like rather than it being really a disciplined form of learning movements that were pre-created and getting very precise with them, it's more like letting that movement pass through you.
Okay. That resonates. Cool. All right, keep going. Got
Yeah.
more?
Yeah.
Okay. How about like my true partner? That's such a fun topic. And I had been feeling like I was going to meet them this year. And then I still heard my guide say, like, you're not ready. Something along the lines of this person is so kind and loving that it would actually freak me out because I hadn't dealt with the trauma from my childhood enough yet. Mainly in the sense that, like, when things feel easy, and this is the crumb stuff that I was talking about, right? When things feel easy, my nervous system kind of jumps in like, well, something's going to happen, something's going to make it stop. So like that is the crumbs of what I've been working with. And I feel like I'm doing a really good job. So I'm curious, like, how much longer do I have to wait?
So I just have to tune into him. He's very beautiful, very, very, very beautiful soul, very beautiful consciousness. If I were to, I mean, I kind of connecting with him, but you know, he's not right here with us. So I would say he's like either of the angelic field as well, or possibly Arcturian, possibly a Mantid, something like that. Like just very, very, very of a very similar field to yours. He also kind of reminds me of like a husky dog. Like I don't know if he's gonna have those like icy blue eyes, or I don't know. There's some energy. Like people don't usually show themselves to me as animals. There's some reason that, yeah, I don't know. Just stuff that in your pocket.
I,
Let it make sense.
I'll know. I think I'll know what it means when it happens.
Yeah. And it feels like you have like, I mean, you already, it's more just sort of allowing the things to unfold. But one of the things that I can feel is that it'll probably happen around the same time that you start feeling like you've gotten a few clients and basically you've rearranged your life so that it is the way you want it to be, and you're excited about your work and you're feeling really good, and it's because there is that part that you were talking about in your nervous system that almost needs that in order to like, again, to come back to the total different dog analogy, but if you were like trying to get past a dog that's like guarding something that you need to get to, you need to give the dog like a steak or something, right? Like something to placate it. And it's a little bit what it feels like is that even though ultimately you will, I don't know, like he's very reliable, but there's a part of you that needs to feel like you're on your own 2 feet in order to feel safe, in order to relax into it. Like if like kind of like if something were to happen and the relationship were to end, that your nervous system would be like, okay, well or your ego mind or something would be like, okay, well but I'm still okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, totally, 100%.
And then I also feel like he's a little bit, even though he's of a higher frequency, he's a little bit more robust in terms of being able to interface with like the normal world without it draining his energy so much.
But yeah, I need a partner who can do that. So because I
Yeah.
can't. do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. I'll be on the lookout for that. So going back a little bit, because I meant to bring this up a while ago and then I got distracted, but you had talked about being an archangelic. I'm just kind of naturally plugged into the Akashic field.
Mhm.
So like that's my main gift so far is their audience. And I've been noticing this for, I guess before I found out I was an archangel or felt it, I had noticed that like, gee, it's so weird. I just like ask a question and I get an answer. And for a long time, I just thought it was my mind. Like it was like, oh, I am just, I don't know what I was tapped into, but I just thought I was good at linear thinking. I was just making up these answers myself that seemed to make sense. But that is why, like, that's me tapping into the Akashic field. I'm just so curious, like, am I my own record keeper? Like I've been shown what I look like as that, and it's a geometric pattern. And I've also been told my name, which feels too sacred to share on the podcast. But am I tapping into like, is it just myself or am I working with other record keepers too?
That's an amazing question. You are a record keeper,
Yeah.
which is so interesting because I've never, this is my first time meeting an incarnated record keeper. Hi, nice to meet you. Funny because I always refer to them as they, and I'm like, I'm not talking to the people's guide. Like I know what that feels like. I like they're telling me, and yeah, it's the record keepers, and they. Oh, it's so interesting. Okay, I don't want to derail this. So yeah, you are often just bringing forward your own information. I feel the presence of. I see a whole collective of record keepers that I've also never seen before. This question, and it's like I don't know, it's like a department. Does that make sense? Like there's the record keeping department, the keepers of the archives. And so sometimes they'll bring something forward for you, but it's not really all that necessary. Like yourself knows what information to pull forward because as a record keeper, you're very familiar with the shape of the records, the organization of the record. And I really like that you mentioned as part of your sort of question that you asked something and then you get an answer. But even though you are a record keeper, you are like of the archangelic field, you still chopped it up to like, I don't know, I'm just like good at linear thinking. Like I'm just making it up. I really appreciate that you shared that. And, I just kind of want to draw everybody's attention to it that it is that subtle. It is that subtle that even when
Yeah.
you get a clear answer, it is our ego and our mind automatically tends to be like, I don't know where that came from, or like, I don't know, I must just be making that up or whatever. And it is a process of actively choosing to validate it. And I would say it's like that's way harder than getting the information in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, the trickiest thing for me too was to realize that like when I hear things, it's in my own voice too.
Yes.
Most of the time. Sometimes it's not, and I can tell like which person it's coming from, like a teacher that passed away or something like that. But it comes in my own voice. So it took a long time for me to be like, yeah, no, that's not that's not your ego. Like that's actually information coming through.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a thing that like I need to hear? Like guidance from guides or my record keeper self or anything that I should just kind of be privy to or have my my attention towards.
Okay. Yeah, they're just bringing forward a few things in order to like assist yourself in making this shift and really purifying. So, like, this is not so much healing work. This is like amplification work on amplifying your channel.
Okay.
But it is continuing to clear it out too. So, they're bringing forward the essence of white oleander. I don't even know if anyone makes that kind of flower essence. I have no idea. All right. I don't know if it's like I feel like it's more of the essence rather than the essential oil. Like your field is very sensitive to vibrational
Yeah.
frequencies of release. And then they're also showing me upping your water intake.
I,
And
I don't know how Laura, I drink, I mean, to tell everybody that's listening, like my urine is clear all day long. Like I drink every like 10 minutes. Like I don't know how, is there like a mineral I'm missing maybe that like,
no, it's not a mineral. They were showing me applying your process over the water. So kind of like praying over the water. So
uh,
if you do
okay.
that, but it feels really important that it's like a purified water. So maybe that's what they're not so much like taking in more water, but taking
Got it.
in water that is of a purified frequency.
Okay. Great.
What else are they seeing? Are you taking any activated charcoal or anything like that?
No.
Okay, they're bringing that forward just to help like attach to those crumbs, as it were, and draw them out of your system.
Great. Awesome.
And have you started doing any toning and work with like crystal singing bowls or anything like that?
No, but I keep feeling the singing bowls like waiting for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's them there too. And then this is
Just like get some and play around with it and have fun.
mhm. And then this next part is not so much. I don't know. I just literally just heard about it this morning. So I don't even fully know what it is. Like I kind of do, but I think maybe the reason I heard about it this morning is to tell you about it. But it's a thing called the harmonic egg.
Huh.
Um, and it's these pods that are like geometry and sound frequency healing patterns.
Okay.
And you go like, sit in them. So I gather again because I literally just heard about them and briefly researched them, but I gather that they are a little bit like float tanks, but there's no water involved. It's sound and geometries and I think maybe light instead of. And there are lots and lots and lots of them in the States, but I think they're fairly new. So
Okay.
yeah, I have a feeling that I learned about it today of no coincidence to tell you about it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you to you and thank you to them for filling me in those pieces. Yeah. It's I'm so sensitive. Being on this planet has been really interesting.
Oh, I can't even imagine like working in the school system and just working the hours of a teacher.
Yeah,
The
it was
whole
pretty
productivity.
intense. Yeah. I know for a long time it was, I have these days where I'm just so fatigued, it's just like I can't even get up to make myself dinner. But when people observe that from the outside, it's lazy, what's wrong with you? You should go to the doctor,
Mhm.
in an interesting walk. I feel in a really good place with it now. And even my family over time has like observed that, I'm none of those things and I do take good care of myself. Like Katie just needs some space right now, so it's nice to see. It's interesting to see how like their perspectives of these things are changing just by like witnessing me. It's a neat experience.
Yeah, and that is so very like kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of our call, like the energy of the angelic field is like as you purify your geometry, it totally influences people around you, even if you're not directly working with them, which is a really beautiful thing. I'm curious, do you know what your human design aura type is?
No, I've only recently heard about the human design thing. I don't know what mine are. No.
Okay. Because also now a lot of it's interesting, a lot of angelics that I've met, which has really only been like probably like a dozen or a couple dozen or something so far, but they tend to be manifesting generators that I would think that they're projectors. Some of them are projectors, but the projector aura type is also what you're describing of just, oh my God, like life. I can't. I'm so tired. And apparently they're designed to only work 4 hours a day.
And that's a
They're
dream.
really loud. Yeah. So that if you're a projector too, maybe you have like a double whammy of just like, oh my God, I can't.
Yeah. Well, part of it feels like, I mean, honestly, on a multidimensional level, I feel like I'm always working. And I don't mean like work in the sense
Yeah.
of like it's a job to make money, but like I'm always doing shit. And sometimes like this body, like it's got to lay down for like 48 hours.
Legitimately. Well, like truly, 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 because a lot of us are always working. We're doing a lot of processing and clearing of like emotional forms and thought forms that aren't even ours, grief that doesn't belong to us, like trauma that doesn't belong to us. And it's a ton of work. And then throw somebody into like something as traumatic as the education system. Like, I'm surprised as you survived. Like, congratulations. Well done.
And through like several autoimmune diseases and lots of weird injuries, like I've just had all these health things. And I don't know, I always refer to myself as a little engine that could, because like I would just keep going, I had horrible Lyme disease for a couple years during the school that I worked in, and I would just go take a nap in my planning time period and then get back to it after. Like, I don't know how I did it, but I did it.
Did it, and now you don't have to do it anymore.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Celebrate you for taking that leap because it's really hard and scary and confronting to extricate ourselves from the trauma programming that tells us that we have to have these jobs, even though they're like destroying our bodies and our minds and our energy field. Well
Yeah.
done.
Thank you. Yeah.
When did you start awakening? Were you just like, I'm curious,
Um,
starting it down?
I've always been like pretty spiritual. I always felt very wise. Like my parents never really felt like my parents. Like I didn't really have like a connection. They weren't somebody I went to. Like there wasn't anybody I trusted other than just like my own, which I guess I was tapping into the Akashic field without knowing it. But it's like, I'll just guide myself through this shit because I don't trust the rest of you. And then in college, I actually studied Eastern religions. And so I started meditating at 19 and I've been doing that ever since. So it's been almost like 20 years of that. And then last year, this is like when it really got interesting. I had a dream. I've always had really crazy dreams about getting taken to councils and all kinds of stuff. But I had one specific one that told me about a Pleiadian lifetime and a bunch of other really cool information. I had never heard the term starseed at that point. But when I came out of the stream, I did a bunch of research right away and I was like, oh my God, there's a fucking name for this. Like, holy shit, this is so crazy. I think the whole weekend I was just like, oh my God, is this real? Oh my God. Am I really? No. And then it was, I guess this year, maybe January, where I had a dream about being told I was an archangel. And then that's, it just keeps continuing to pick up more and more and more. But at this point, I know it. I can claim it. I'm not freaked out. I'm not
That's
typing it. So it feels like it's going to keep moving forward. So it's been gradual, probably kind of similar to yours, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like it is for a lot of us, it is a gradual process and it kind of has to be that way. But that first hurdle is like the ability to claim it. When you get over that hurdle and you can say it first to yourself and say it out loud and then say it to somebody else, then it's like, oh, okay. And all of a sudden, whatever mediating force, be it our guides or our record keepers or like whoever is kind of like helping to filter out what we're not ready for. They're like, all right, you got it, like here. And they're just, throwing new stuff at us all the time. Do you
Yeah.
feel you resonate with I guess I don't know, it was during 12/12 anyway that I got that message, that light language activation where they were like, oh, the amnesia cloak is gone now and like thou shalt remember. Is that coming through for you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things like, and I'm getting information, about, and that's the cool thing. Like we were talking about, it's hard to know because it sounds like your voice, but like something will come in and it's like, whoa, there's no fucking way I would have thought of that. So stuff like that comes in. Yeah. And the telepathy, since we were practicing that, like I did see the flower that one day I had watched it after. So I wasn't in class with you guys because I was working all that time. But I was like, at first I was doubting myself. And then you were like, I turned it into a flower. And I was like, no fucking way. Like, so still all these pieces where I'm continuing to like claim it and bring it in. Even sending you that voice memo where I said like I'm an archangel of the Akashic records. Like that was new to even phrase it like that. So it's still new. I'm still not fully like I'm not totally confident about all of it, but I'm getting there.
Confident enough to do an Akashic reading with me on the podcast. So I'd say that's pretty confident.
Well, they have no idea how nervous I was before it started.
Yeah, most people say that they're nervous. And I'm like, it's only the best things that come through. Do you have any other questions or anything else that you want to look into?
Um, no, I'm okay with everything.
Okay,
Well,
cool.
okay, there's one thing actually. Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I had this really weird knee injury. Just like the cartilage in my knees just kind of vanished. I woke up one day and they were swollen like baseballs. I had to like move to my mom's house to be taken care of because I couldn't do things on my own anymore. I'm pretty sure now that it was an agreement that I made to transmute trauma from my familial lineage. But they're healing all the time and I can heal anything. So I'm working on growing the cartilage back, but it's already been like a year and a half. I'm just kind of wondering like where am I at in this process? Because I know there'll be fine and I'll get all that flexibility back and I'll stop being in pain. But like I can still hear my kneecap grind against my tibia when I go up the stairs. Like so when is this gonna shift?
Okay. And before I go into the records, this is just me asking, but are you somebody that consumes animal products?
I do. Yeah, not a whole lot, but yes.
And do you ever like make any kind of meat stock with like, cartilage, soup bones, like beef knuckle
No,
bones and
no,
oxtails?
but I can certainly add that to the list of stuff I do. Yeah.
So right away, I'm seeing somebody in your lineage who it feels like a fair ways back, but was like deliberately hobbled by having their kneecaps broken. And so it feels, I don't know if this makes sense or it resonates at all, but it feels like that person was a slave, not an African American or dark skinned slave. It feels like it has to do with, is any part of your family from like mainland Europe?
Yeah. Mostly all of it.
Yeah, okay. Because it feels like there was a crime that was committed by a family member. It feels like a male family member, like, or a lineage, whatever, long time ago, that like the penance was almost like the person's oh shot a deer or something that belonged to like a lord or whatever, and got like turned into the penance rather than doing jail time was to become like the slave of that lord to like pay off the debt. But of course, the lord was never gonna let the debt be paid off. It was debt forevermore. And it feels like that person came on the boat with the lord to come here to North America and at some point made a break for it and tried to escape, and the penance was to be hobbled at the knees.
Wow.
And then it feels like it got passed through your lineage as like just it mostly rather than knee injuries, it feels like arthritis, like arthritic knees. And you are clearing that. So I feel like even seeing that part is really going to help that like just seeing the piece of how this originated and what it is that you're clearing, and then the next piece is to, like, release any ownership of it at all. That even if it came through your genetic lineage, like, first of all, it it never like, it was all an illusory dream construct, so it didn't belong to any of the characters, even the one who hobbled the person, like, it was, you know, a story, a drama that was played out, so I feel like that's the hardest layer to release, even though it has nothing to do with you. I can feel, oof. I don't know if maybe we should try and do a timeline healing on that person or something like that. I don't know if you want to try and do it on your own or you want me to quickly try and do it or something. But
I mean, I'm happy to have you do it.
okay, okay.
If you have time and stuff, I don't want to take up time.
No worries. It feels really sticky. I'm just looking for the alternate timeline, the alternate like probable timeline to move this person to. So dramatic. So feels like this man fell in love with somebody and wasn't allowed to marry. And so that was the reason for trying to run away. Like he'd already been. I was like, why did he try to run away? He'd been a slave for like 20 years. Okay. So interesting. The next available timeline was being sold to somebody else at an earlier point. It was still here in North America. So he still crossed the ocean and he was part of he could have been so I'm moving him to the timeline where he was chosen to be part of like a deal, like a land sale kind of deal, a land transfer of ownership to a kinder owner who eventually like kind of became close to him and assigned him to become a gardener and like a groundskeeper and then eventually kind of like freed him. But at that point, he stayed on. He quite liked his work and his life, but it was a very humble life, but he had freedom. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the energy, the life force energy out of the timeline where he was hobbled, and I'm moving it back and to a branching point into a different timeline and putting his consciousness there so that his body was always intact and he lived a more fulfilling life. And that should make a pretty big difference.
I can feel it already. I think that was really cool. Thank you for doing that.
Mhm. And then, yeah, consuming cartilage products will definitely help to your body to rebuild its own cartilage. And yeah, the final piece is just like using all of your tools, but it feels like it's a crumb and really going to fall into place when you move. Are you moving to Arizona or New Mexico?
Yes, those are originally I was thinking like Austin, Texas, but it then got changed to like Arizona or New Mexico. So those are the two, specifically Sedona or Santa Fe. I'm not sure which out of those.
I feel like it's Sedona.
That's what
Uh,
I feel too. All right.
yeah. It's just gonna like things are gonna get healed. Like even the vortex of that area is gonna just like,
Yeah.
but your part is to just like release any ownership. Like you don't need to like hold on or pay penance for anybody.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yay. Well, I'm so glad we got to do this reading and have this
Yeah,
conversation.
me too.
Thank you so much for being willing to share it on the podcast. And I'm happy that I got to like actually see you and talk to you face to face.
Me too. Like I said, this was a dream. So thank you so much, Amy.
Oh, thank you, Katie. Thank you for being in my world.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I hope that you have an amazing day. And thank you, beautiful listeners, for being here with us. I hope that you felt some activations and got some clarity yourselves. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Whether you are just starting out on your spiritual awakening journey or you're ready to dive deep into activating your psychic gifts, I have a complete store ready for you to learn all the things that you are looking for answers to. I have light codes to upgrade and calibrate your consciousness. I have a class on the first 13 dimensions, a class on dark entities, a class on the human ego from a multidimensional perspective, and powerful modules and bundles on psychic activation, with more classes and courses being added all the time. In fact, I just added 3 classes about the Christ light frequency and the holographic field that have been selling like wildfire, and I get a ton of messages from people who appreciate this content. I truly love to serve you all, and I do my best to translate all the downloads and transmissions I receive from the Akashic Records into this library of information for you. You can find it all at amybelair.com/store. Enjoy.